Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Lamb, sitting in for David Zhang. Here are some of today's top stories. How is Trump reacting to his verdict in the New York trial? How are Americans reacting? We'll hear from people around the country. And what's next for former President Trump? More from his lawyer, Todd Blanche, and senior advisor, Kash Patel. Campus protests still happening at some schools. Today, many individuals were arrested at the Israel-Hamas war protest at UC Santa Cruz. First up, former President Trump is promising to appeal the verdict in his New York criminal trial. Hear part of his press conference held today at the Trump Tower.
If they can do this to me, they can do this to anyone. As far as the trial itself, it was very unfair. We weren't allowed to use our election expert under any circumstances. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. The public understands, and they understand what's going on. This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge.
More on the unprecedented criminal conviction of the former U.S. president. Here are some of the reactions from New Yorkers.
I'm not even worried about it because the truth always comes out, right? The truth's going to come out, so I'm not even worried about it. Even if Trump goes to jail, gets out, or gets bail, or whatever, we're all going to vote for Trump still. It's not going to. How's it going to change my mind?
Oh my God, I almost fainted. It's disgusting, I'm telling you, man. I was just like, how could they do that? But the more money, the more power. You know how it is over here in America, man.
I'm so pleased that there's finally some accountability for Donald Trump.
I feel good. It's a great day for the American people, for everybody. I mean, you know, who is against who believe in the law. And I mean, you know, it's a great day. They see him, they see that no one is above the law.
I kind of worry that it'll further divide our country.
It'll be overturned. It won't stand up in court on appeal.
Trump has denied wrongdoing, and an attorney representing him said they would appeal as quickly as possible. Around the country, Floridians, Arizonians, Texans, and Californians also reacting to the verdict.
My first reaction was sadness for America, sadness for Trump. But at the end of the day, it's only going to increase his support like every other time they indicted him.
Same thing. It's very scary. Very scary. We're in a third world country right now. I don't even feel like we live in the United States. It can happen to him. It can happen to any of us.
Well, I can't say that I'm surprised. I was expecting it. So, actually.
I don't think he should be treated any differently than anybody else. This is the matter that is pretty cut and dry. If you do a certain thing, you go to jail. It doesn't matter who you are.
No. I'm voting for Trump. Yeah. He will be my #1 ballot vote.
When you have a lot of jury members and they all agree on the same thing, you know there has to be some sort of truthfulness to their verdict.
I think it's all a sham. I think they shouldn't be able to run election interference the way they are. I think, you know, if you commit a crime, I think you need to be prosecuted for it. But there's been years coming before this, and it all pops up 6 months before an election. I don't think that's right.
I think it's insane. It's a bunch of wasted taxpayer money.
Hoping now that our electoral system will also be the final arbiter about this and that he will not be reelected.
But I'm going to keep it real. As a current presidential candidate and one of the ones actually winning majority support in all states, including Democratic states, as it shows statistically, I believe that still his support level from the people is not going to go down much.
Justice Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 11th, just days before the Republican Party is scheduled to formally nominate Trump for president. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, after the verdict, said the jury has spoken. He would not comment on sentencing and whether prosecutors were seeking jail time for Trump. Trump's defense team says it will fight the conviction by filing motions and vowed to appeal. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on Bragg and what's next for former President Trump.
Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg praised jurors and prosecutors after former President Trump's conviction on Thursday.
Their service is literally the cornerstone of our judicial system.
The Manhattan DA, thanking jurors, said they performed a fundamental civic duty. Bragg says jurors vowed to make a decision based on evidence in the law after hearing testimony from 22 witnesses. Trump's lawyer Todd Blanche told CNN they will appeal the conviction after sentencing.
We were indicted for conduct that happened in 2015, 16, 17, in a jurisdiction that it was very hard for us to get a fair trial.
Blanche says it was telling that half the potential jury pool walked out for being unable to be impartial. He said everyone on the jury knew Trump as president, candidate, or from The Apprentice.
I think the timing of this trial and was really unfair to President Trump. There was so much publicity around the witnesses and around leading up to the trial that it just, our system of justice isn't supposed to be a system where every person that walks in the courtroom knows about the case.
Judge Juan Merchan set sentencing for July 11th, a few days before the Republican National Convention, where Trump is set to become the 2024 GOP nominee. John Malcolm from the Heritage Foundation told NTD the chances of Trump going to prison are very slim.
Very slim. First of all, he is entitled to Secret Service protection as a former president and as a putative nominee for the Republican Party. The Secret Service would never allow him to sit in a prison cell where he could be exposed to danger.
Former federal prosecutor Kash Patel, a current senior advisor for Trump, told NTD the two-tier system of justice has exploded, calling it a tragic day for America.
What happened to all the constitutional due process jurists and lawyers out there that said due process and the rule of law in America applies equally to all? What happened to all those in the media that were cheering on the unlawful prosecution of Donald Trump, the unconstitutional verdict that was read into court today? My question to them is, what song will you be singing next week when Hunter Biden, the current president's son, goes on trial for federal tax and gun charges?
Trump faces 3 other felony indictments, but the New York case may be the only one to conclude before the November election. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Police swarmed the UC Santa Cruz campus, arresting several students who refused to take down their own encampments. NTD's Christina Corona provides more details on the story.
Police in riot gear surrounded protesters at UC Santa Cruz on Friday to dismantle an encampment and barricades set up by pro-Palestinian demonstrators who had been blocking the main campus entrance throughout the week. According to the university, many people were arrested. Campus, local, and state police instructed protesters to leave, confiscating signs and removing parts of the barricade. There appeared to be pushing and shoving between police and protesters. Officers then began detaining several individuals with zip ties. Scott Hernandez-Jason, a spokesperson for the university, stated that for weeks, participants in the encampment were repeatedly and clearly instructed to dismantle the encampment and stop blocking access to various campus resources and the campus itself. He said in a statement, they were notified that their actions were unlawful and unsafe. And this morning, they were also given multiple warnings by law enforcement to leave the area and disperse to avoid arrest. Unfortunately, many refused to follow this directive and many individuals are being arrested. It is unknown if anyone was injured. The university held classes remotely on Friday. This comes just days after graduate student workers at UC Santa Cruz continued a strike that began last week over the university system's treatment of pro-Palestinian protesters. Christina Corona, NTD News.
As the conflict in the Middle East continues, so have calls for a ceasefire. Some California cities have begun issuing official statements calling for a stop to the violence. Here's NTD's BJ Kang with more.
Just recently, the city of Almani passed a resolution calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, joining numerous other Californian cities to do so in previous months. Behind the trend are protesters rallying at city council meetings, urging their local government to pass these ceasefire resolutions.
I am going to move that we, the city of Pomona, approve tonight a ceasefire resolution that calls, and the language is there, that calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza, and really a ceasefire in all of Palestine and Israel.
Calls for resolution issuings are led by groups of activists who show up to city council meetings, pressuring local governments to call upon federal powers to bring a ceasefire and to support H.R. 786, another resolution sponsored by House Representative Cori Bush. H.R. 786 urges the Biden administration to facilitate a ceasefire in Israel.
Because we are still witnessing an ongoing genocide of our Palestinian sisters and brothers, and you, our local leaders, are failing to represent us, to treat us equitably, and failing to call for a ceasefire.
More than a dozen Californian cities have adopted these resolutions, and while some councils have issued them,
certainly our role is to improve the quality of life for our residents here, but we also can't be silent to what's happening throughout other parts of the world.
Others have denied them.
I'm sure a lot of resolutions have been passed. I'd like to see our time and effort spent on things here in Montclair and in our general region that we can do something about. I'm sure you've also taken time to speak to our U.S. senators. They're the ones who can do something about this through their policies.
Calls for a ceasefire in Gaza have been increasing, even on the international stage, with the UN Middle East envoy having just reiterated the call for a ceasefire, a return to negotiations for hostages, and allowing humanitarian aid to enter the battle-torn region. BJ Kang, NTD News, California.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come right back. The Consumer Expenditure Index increased, according to the Commerce Department. We hear from Californians who share their experience with food and utilities. New analysis finds that last summer set the record for heat-related deaths in the U.S. Most occurred in states typically accustomed to the heat. NBA Finals odds take shape between the Boston Celtics and Dallas Mavericks. We'll zoom in on each team's key to victory as both are set to advance. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Lamb. Families continue to feel the persistent inflation in the U.S. The Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge increased in April. We'll hear from some Californians. Within the government's personal consumption expenditures report, goods prices rose 0.2% nationwide, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Prices for services increased 0.3%, food costs dipped 0.2%, while energy prices popped 1.2%. Here's what Californians have to say.
Oh, the utilities have really gone up. Really gone up. It's sad.
Since I've been grocery shopping more and often, I noticed a lot of the prices have raised. I used to get 3 pounds of chicken for like $20-something. Now it's in the 30s. So this is spiked.
Everything's getting expensive, like insurance and all that. We're living into like some weird times where we're also being hit by, let's say, natural events. We're talking about winds, fires and drought, and also like lately the rains that we got and all the damage they're making. So I think that just the supplier are just actually trying to make back their money.
The total price index went up 2.7% compared to last April. While energy prices have cooled off in recent weeks, crude oil prices are still up about 10% this year. Gasoline prices have also dipped below $3.56.
The food's the worst. I ordered a mushroom burger. Fries are free, and a half order of onion rings cost me $32.
And how people are adapting to the economy.
Instead of like driving over here, I'll just walk over here. Like if it's like 10-minute walk instead of like a 3-minute drive. So just stuff like that, like grocery shopping. I'll go get groceries and just walk them back home.
There's many things. I mean, like we upgrading our house to be more energy efficient. You know, we have some more of a passive cooling system instead of using the AC or even the heater, if anything. We're looking at other solutions.
One candidate running for U.S. House told NTD,
when the government spends a lot of money, it causes inflation because that's not real production and it crowds out private investment. We need to save money and invest in private investment so we can create more jobs and produce more goods and reduce inflation.
David Lamb, NTD News, California. A new analysis finds that last summer set the record for heat-related deaths in the United States. Many people died in areas that are typically used to handling the heat.
Last June in Dallas, 66-year-old postal worker Eugene Gates Jr., who loved working outdoors, texted his wife that it was close to 90 degrees at 7:30 a.m. His wife, Carla Gates, said he told her to be careful. He kept working in the heat that felt like 119 degrees with the humidity factored in, and finally passed out in somebody's yard. He ran a fever of 104.6 degrees and died, with the medical examiner saying heat contributed to his death.
The way that my husband died, it could have been preventable. It would help if you just have just a bottle of water, cold bottle of water for them, or Gatorade, or even popsicles, something that will cool them off.
According to an Associated Press analysis of data from the CDC, more than 2,300 people in the United States died in the summer of 2023, with their death certificates mentioning the effects of excessive heat, the highest in 45 years. Over 24 doctors, public health experts, meteorologists, and other federal officials told the AP that's only a small fraction of the real death toll. They say that what happened last summer amped up America's heat and health problem to an entirely new level as seen in coroner, hospital, ambulance, and weather records.
It's a combination of the air temperatures plus the humidity, which really, hammered someone if you were outside. It was very, very debilitating. We're seeing an upper air pattern develop right now for the first 20 days of May that is eerily similar to what we saw last June. And basically, it's just a big ridge of high pressure building over northern Mexico.
Nearly 3/4 of the heat deaths last summer were in 5 southern states that are supposed to be acclimated to the heat, places that plan for it and could handle it. Except this time they couldn't handle it, killing the most people in Arizona, followed by Texas, Nevada, Florida, and Louisiana. Those 5 states accounted for 61% of the nation's heat deaths in the last 5 years.
The NBA Finals are set to kick off soon, and basketball fans are buzzing with excitement. We speak with NTD's Carlos Reyes to break down what promises to be an epic showdown between the Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks.
Well, David, it's a classic David versus Goliath scenario. The Boston Celtics have been a powerhouse all season, winning 64 games and dominating the playoffs with only 2 losses. They boast the most efficient offense in NBA history, led by Jason Tatum and Eastern Conference Finals MVP Jaylen Brown. On the other hand, the Dallas Mavericks have been the surprise package of the playoffs, especially after their midseason trades. They've knocked out the top seeds in the West thanks to Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, along with key additions like Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington.
So Boston seems to be on their way to their 18th championship. What are the keys to success here?
Well, David, for Boston, it's all about leveraging their depth and versatility. Their defense is formidable, particularly their backcourt with Drew Holiday and Derek White, both named to the all-defensive team. The Celtics will need to keep Luka Doncic in check, which is no small task. Offensively, Tatum and Brown need to continue their stellar performances. Tatum seeking redemption after a tough finals in 2022, while Brown has been on fire this postseason.
And what about the Mavericks? What will it take for them to pull off a win here?
Well, David, the Mavericks need Luka Doncic to be the best player on the court, point blank, period. Despite battling a knee injury, Doncic has been phenomenal, especially in clutch moments. His ability to take over games will be crucial in this series. Meanwhile, Kyrie Irving, who has a lot to prove against the former team, will also play a pivotal role. The supporting cast, including Washington and rookie Derek Lively II, has to continue to step up. Their defense and ability to stretch the floor will be vital against Boston's tough lineup.
All right, and speaking of Doncic, how has his performance been this postseason?
Well, Doncic has been incredible, even if he hasn't always been at his peak. He's averaging 28.8 points and 8.8 assists per game with 6 triple-doubles so far. His signature moment came with a game-winning three-pointer over Rudy Gobert in the second round. Despite a shooting slump early on, his impact has been undeniable, and if he can overcome his knee issues and find his shooting rhythm, he'll be the Mavericks' ticket to victory.
Yeah, so it sounds like Doncic would be a trooper to go through all that. So, and lastly, Carlos, just for your opinion, what players do you see as the most crucial matchups in this series?
Well, David, the backcourt battles will be fascinating to say the least. Watching Luka and Kyrie go against Holiday and White is a dream for basketball fans. But beyond that, Jaylen Brown's defense on Doncic will be key. Also, Tatum's efficiency will be under the microscope. If he can find a shot, especially from beyond the arc, it could be the difference maker. This finals is shaping up to be a chess match of adjustments and star performances all around.
All right, Carlos, thank you so much for your insight and giving us the details inside the court. So we're looking forward to Game 1 on June 6th.
Definitely, David. Thank you for having me. It's shaping up to be a great final series.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. More U.S. law firms are shutting down their operations in Shanghai, China's financial center. More on what's behind the exodus and why an expert says accounting firms in China are the next target. More on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Lamb. That's our program. Have a wonderful weekend.